Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm bored. COVID made me bored, and today I'm actually not going to do a playthrough, but rather I'm going to talk about a few Kickstarters that I've backed. That's right, I'm so bored that I'm now backing Kickstarters. If you don't already know, a Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform to help developers and creators get their ideas off the ground and bring their creations to life. So specifically the tabletop games, I decided to back a few games from last year, and I discovered, or this is after I discovered, that a few of the board games that I purchased through retail during the pandemic, they actually were originally Kickstarters. So Hellboy, the board game, Marvel United, Project Elite, just a few of the games that I picked up, they actually started off as Kickstarters. And from there, I have been on the Kickstarter website, and I think there are a few other very similar crowdfunding websites out there, but I think Kickstarter is one of the popular ones. I came across a few that I decided to back, and I want to talk about those. So first of all, why do a Kickstarter? Are the products any cheaper? It really depends. I think the benefit of a Kickstarter, or backing a Kickstarter, is usually the bonus or Kickstarter exclusive items that you get compared to its retail release. And most of the exclusive items you wouldn't be able to buy separately through a retail store or through your local game store, unless there was a previous Kickstarter backer who decided to sell off their copy. So if it's important for you to have these exclusive items, then Kickstarter games or creations are the way to go. So on top of that, during last year, I think I had a very serious case of FOMO, fear of missing out, and it actually reeled me into backing a few Kickstarter games. So first off, last year, around April, so April 2021, Come Games announced their X-Men United Kickstarter. At that time, I had already purchased the retail copy of Marvel United, and I enjoyed the game and the mechanics. I really like the miniatures. I love them. I think they're great. I think Come produces some of the best miniatures out there, and I also enjoyed the easy flow of the gameplay. Back then, I didn't know Marvel United was a Kickstarter, or started off as a Kickstarter, and I didn't even know that Kickstarter existed. So I saw that they had the X-Men United, and it's a no-brainer. My FOMO led me to backing it, and I'm excited to add a ton of new characters. I think it's like over 70 characters through the core pledge that I did. And I think Come really milked this one because they incorporated so much content and included optional buys, even from the original Marvel United Kickstarter. So for those people who missed out, like me, who missed out on that first Kickstarter, you had that opportunity to go back and purchase some of those optional buys. And I think that was great because I do feel like I did miss out, and I'm glad that I could pick up at least one item from the first Kickstarter. So I decided to back the Mutant Pledge, so it was the base one. It wasn't the top tier. It can get absurdly expensive, and I think that's one of the things I've come to see about Kickstarter is that you can easily spend a lot on these Kickstarter campaigns. And I decided to back just the Mutant Pledge, which gives me all the exclusives that come with the X-Men United core box, as well as the X-Force edition. I'm not sure why they kept that separate, but I guess they wanted to keep it as a separate expansion. And I decided to add the Gold Team box, which included the two characters that I really wanted, which was Colossus and Iceman. And I also added the Infinity Gauntlet box from the first Kickstarter, the first Marvel United Kickstarter. And the only reason I did that was because I wanted Thanos and his cronies. So I'm expecting this delivery of what I backed in May of this year, so it's coming up soon. and I am looking forward to it. But it's been almost a year. Do I regret making the pledge? I'd have to say yes and no. I'm looking forward to all the character additions, and I believe they've tweaked and refined a bit of the character abilities to make the gameplay more interesting, and improve that experience. I found that with the original Marvel United, most of the characters pretty much played the same. You had a few abilities that kind of were thematic, but it didn't really feel as thematic. I'm also looking forward to having more villains to play against, and these anti-heroes, which I think are that's also very interesting. And I think just overall, it would be nice, but I'm expecting that this box coming in is going to be huge because there's just so many characters. But at the same time, with all the other tabletop games I've acquired since then, Marvel United hasn't really been hitting the table as often these days, but it's quite possible that Marvel United, X-Men United will breathe new life into there. So that is something I am sort of looking forward to, and who knows, within the next few months, it might be a point where I might be one of those backers who says, you know what, I'm actually okay with just a retail box. It gives me enough fun as it is, and I don't need any more. And maybe I'll sell off my copy to somebody who may have missed out on their pledge or missed out on the Kickstarter. So, but definitely something that reeled me into the world of kickstarting tabletop games. All right, next up, also from April 2021 last year, is Hellboy, the dice game. And also it comes with expansions for Hellboy, the board game. And this was a Kickstarter that immediately got my attention. I have the Hellboy, the board game, and I have a video on that as well. And Hellboy was the first dungeon crawler that I bought, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the mystery and story of the case files and how your actions and depending on your progress could dictate different results or different outcomes of the mission, successful or unsuccessful. I enjoyed that final confrontation that you would have, as well as the variety of frog monsters or enemies, demons that you would encounter. Granted, I think for the price point that I paid for the retail box, it could have used a bit more variety in terms of miniatures, but it was okay for what it is. The theme comes through very strong, and the retail box I had, again, retail only. I didn't get any of the Kickstarter exclusives, so again, I felt I kind of missed out on that as well. So around the same time last year, my FOMO kicked in, and I saw the expansions, and I thought also the Hellboy dice game would also be something really interesting too. I also felt Hellboy the board game, with the 6 case files, felt a little underwhelming. Even though you can randomize your encounter cards, it does offer enough replay value, but I just overall I just felt that I could use a few more. And also the idea of a dice version was very appealing, because at the same time last year I was also looking at Welcome to the Dungeon by ELLO Games. I don't even know how to pronounce it. And granted, they're not exactly the same, but there is sort of some similarities, except for Hellboy, you have a bit of dice management in terms of your decision making, whereas Welcome to the Dungeon, you are sort of doing sort of a wager or a betting system on how far you can get with limited amount of equipment that you go through, and hoping that you can survive. So instead of Welcome to the Dungeon, I decided to back the Hellboy dice game, and having the 4 additional expansions was also something appealing. So the 4 expansions that they had that's coming is the Storm and the Fury, and I think it was called Pandemonium. Let me just double check here. Pandemonium, End of Days, and Hell on Earth, as well as some Kickstarter exclusives, which includes additional bosses and a few additional case files. This pledge is supposed to be arriving this year in June, so it is something that I am looking forward to. I didn't purchase any of the optional buys as I felt this pledge contained enough for me. And a year later, do I regret the pledge? No. I'm excited for this to come in. I'm excited to have the dice game version. It'll be my on-the-go Hellboy fix whenever I need it. And I'm looking forward to those added expansion case files, the Kickstarter exclusive case files, and the miniatures. And even a year later, Hellboy, the board game, still hits the tabletop for me. And I think this Kickstarter will just keep it there. In late October 2021, Marvel Dice Throne showed up on the Kickstarter, and as you probably already know, I'm a big fan of Marvel, and I pretty much enjoy any game with a superhero theme, specifically Marvel or DC. And I do have quite a few card games and dice games based on Marvel or DC. And Marvel Dice Throne it's based on Dice Throne. It's the Dice Throne series. I have never played Dice Throne, but from what I understand and what I've read online, even prior to backing it, this is not a reskin. It carries some of the same mechanics, but I think some of the character implementations differ from the characters in Dice Throne, but I believe you can still mix and match. Like, you can still play characters from Dice Throne against characters from Marvel Dice Throne. The closest thing I have to this, and it's not even close, it doesn't even resemble it, but the only thing I can think of at the time was Dice Masters, because I've never played Dice Throne, but I do have Dice Masters, and I do enjoy it. And I thought this might be something similar, so I didn't want to get another dice game with superheroes. When I started to watch the playthroughs and read the rulebook for Dice Throne, I actually thought it was pretty neat. I like this idea that there's sort of a Yahtzee feel to it. You're rolling dice, allocating dice to execute different attacks, abilities, or status effects. You are attacking your opponent and trying to bring down their health down to 0. So the gameplay looks interesting, and the Kickstarter included 8 characters, which I think once it hits retail, it would separate into 3 different boxes. So you have, I think, a box of 2 characters, 2 boxes of 2 characters, and a box of 4 characters, whereas this combines all 8 characters in one large, what they call battle chest, I guess. And the 8 characters does bring a lot of variety. You've got Captain Marvel, you've got Scarlet Witch, Thor, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, Black Widow, Doctor Strange, Loki, and Black Panther. I was a little disappointed that you only get 1 villain and no Iron Man, but it's okay. You still get a good variety of characters, and I can see that there could be a lot of good combinations and variety for people to choose and play one of their favorite characters. So I went for the Battle Chest pledge. I didn't really need the other pledge, which included the playmat and dice tray add-ons. But I definitely, seeing what they've done in terms of providing some of the Kickstarter exclusive, which are the promo cards, and the upgraded Battle Chest trays, I actually think that's really neat. I'm a big fan of having a well-organized game insert. Not all my games have that, and sometimes it's a little frustrating. But I like that with your cards, your dice, and your character board. They all have their own separate, unique battle tray that fits in the slot of the battle chest. I like that. It looks really cool, and I'm actually, if anything, that's one thing I'm actually excited about. So it's been about 6 months now, and if I look back, do I have any regrets? Honestly, right now I don't think so. I don't have a game like this, and even though it's kind of a head-to-head battle game, and for the most part, I mostly roll solo, I think it's going to be a great addition to my tabletop collection, especially when my kids are old enough to play with me. And I think this is something that they would enjoy, and I would definitely enjoy teaching them, and I would definitely enjoy playing with them, and hopefully at some point with my nephews too. So that's Marvel Dice Throne. I forgot to mention that for Marvel Dice Throne, I am expecting that to arrive sometime this June, hopefully sometime this summer, if the progress of that campaign goes smoothly without any hiccups. And last but not least, just this month, I backed Astro Knights on Kickstarter, which I'm also expecting to receive this year. I believe it'll be sometime in the fall and around October. And this is a deck builder game from the same team that created Aeon's End. I've never played Aeon's End, but it's been on my watch list for some time. I actually already have a number of deck builders, so before I saw what Aeon's End was about, I was not really inclined to get yet another deck builder, because I have floated the idea of a few others, namely the Transformers deck building game and G.I. Joe deck building game, and simply because of the theme. I love Transformers, I grew up with G.I. Joe, but the rule book and the gameplay, it's there. I can feel like I want to get it, but it's not enough to really make me want to get it. But right now I am definitely not G.I. Joe, but I am leaning towards possibly Transformers, because I do enjoy Transformers. Anyways, with respect to Aeon's End, one aspect I did like about it was that you don't shuffle your discard pile. Typically with a regular deck builder, once you run out of cards from your main deck, you take your discard pile, shuffle it, and start from there. With Aeon's End, there is no shuffling, and so that means placement of the card when you discard it or play from your hand, it matters. So order matters, because you can easily strategize your next round when you do need to draw from a fresh deck. So that was very intriguing. That was something very different, a mechanic of a deck builder that was very different from any of the other deck builders I have. I have Legendary, I have DC deck building, I have NHL deck building, and Aeon's End would have been different. So that's why it was on my watch list. And I like that strategic element that no shuffling your discard pile provides. But I wasn't too keen on the theme for Aeon's End. So when I saw Astro Knights come on board or show up on Kickstarter, that definitely raised it on my radar. So I definitely like space theme heroes. I like space theme heroes that battle aliens. And so Astro Knights fits that bill. I like the artwork is it's not obviously just to avoid any IP issues. It's not like any characters are recognizable to anything else, but they are your Guardians of the Galaxy type heroes. And I like that theme. Given that it's based on the mechanics of Aeon's End, that was another aspect that intrigued me. And as I understand it, Astro Knights is actually more streamlined and faster to set up. I read the rule book, and overall, honestly, I was drawn to back it. And it seemed to get a lot of positive previews in terms of comments. A lot of people excited that it's a little faster setup. And again, I've never played Aeon's End, but apparently it can be a fairly involved process just to set up the game. But I went in for the Astro Knights pledge. That was the base pledge, and I didn't really need all the extras like a playmat or the accessory pack. I think I could probably live without it. But I definitely felt, this was a game I wanted to back. I like the idea of not only trying to survive and defeat or kill the boss, but you're also trying to protect your homeworld. And as I mentioned before, the deck building aspect is something different than any of the other deck builders I have. You don't reshuffle your discard pile, and you have sort of a predefined category-based marketplace. In addition, you're not just spending resources to acquire new cards. In my other deck builders, you generate power or generate resources, you spend it, get new cards, and rinse and repeat. In this Astro Knights, you
you have new cards that you can buy from the marketplace, but you also use your resources, or in this case they call it fuel, to power up your abilities. You can power up your abilities or power up your homeworld, or increase the number of weapons that you can slot in. So I like that. I think by doing this, it adds more depth to your gameplay. You're not just focused on just the marketplace and acquiring more cards. You really have to think about what is most important to you at the time you need to do it. And that could easily create more replayability with this game, because your decisions that you make, if you go through the exact same game again but change your decisions, I think I'm gonna add more resources to put more weapons in my slots, or you know what, I'm gonna make use of my special abilities more often, or I'll focus on different cards or different categories of cards from the marketplace. That could easily change the outcome. So for the most part, I think that actually looked really great. Looks very interesting, and the fundraiser campaign just closed, and I'm committed to it at this point. And it's less than a month, so for me right now, I have no regrets. I think Astro Knights easily takes Aeon's End off my watch list, and I can move on to something else. So definitely looking forward to that, and hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have a gameplay video on Astro Knights to show you guys.
And finally, I just wanted to talk about a few, I guess we'll call them runner-ups. These are the ones that I saw. I had them bookmarked on Kickstarter as favorites. I was watching them and just contemplating. Kickstarter is going to be the death of my wallet for sure, because there's just so much creative stuff out there, and I'm specifically talking about tabletop games, since that is what's been keeping me alive for the last 2 years, that I could easily dump hundreds and hundreds of dollars into these games. I think my FOMO has leveled out a bit, so I'm really focused on gameplay mechanics that I don't have already in the other games, or a theme that I really think is exceptional, or just an overall gameplay that I feel I would enjoy the most. So these runner-ups have nothing to do whether they're good or bad. I'm certainly not I'm not in any position to criticize these. You need to turn to those seasoned tabletop gamers that can tell you more about it. But at the end of the day, it wasn't enough to make me want to back it. So the first one would be Monster Hunter. And really the one appealing thing about this was the sheer size of the miniatures. And back at the time when I saw this Kickstarter, I was into minis. I was into miniatures. Half my games that I bought, board games, I easily swung towards the ones that had really cool miniatures. And Monster Hunter, wow, they looked great. But at the end of it, I felt the overall game flow and really the experience that you're getting out of that game, it just didn't do it for me. And actually, I kind of feel like in some ways I in turn ended up with getting a Devil May Cry, which I feel has some similarities. Not exactly, but has some similarities. So that's one that I sort of eyed for a bit. Another one I was looking at was Seige. That's the Tom Clancy Rainbow Six type of skirmish game. I enjoyed playing Rainbow Six on the Xbox and on the PC. I enjoyed some of the other Tom Clancy video games as well, and I thought a tabletop version of that, very cool. And it's a skirmish. It's sort of a player versus player. You're controlling squads and trying to basically, one's playing sort of the attacker, the other is playing the defender. Cool weapons, different character attributes and qualities. But the rule set, again, it wasn't a game or a gameplay that I thought, yeah, I really have to have it. I think the idea is cool, and just the idea of sort of that Rainbow Six feel. But again, not enough to get me in there. Another one was Masters of the Universe. Come on, can't go wrong with He-Man, right? And a He-Man board game, very cool. I liked the idea of having these miniatures based on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe world. The gameplay seemed really interesting, sort of movement and the mechanics, but as much as I liked He-Man, there are other themes that I definitely have more of a passion for. So that one was taunting me for quite some time, but at the end I didn't go for it. After that came actually two kind of very close together. The first one was Resident Evil 3, the Kickstarter, and then followed shortly by Resident Evil. And I never knew about the Resident Evil game until I came across Resident Evil 2, which also started on a Kickstarter a while back. And from what I read and from what I saw from reviews, a lot of people were really disappointed about the overall quality. The gameplay's there. Capturing the essence of Resident Evil was there. But everyone was just griping about the quality of the components for the price that you're paying. And mainly the tiles were just so dark, you couldn't even make out any of the details. And the doors that you put down as the tokens, just too dark to differentiate. And I think that just sort of ruined the experience for those backers. And I would imagine that that could leave a bad taste in your mouth, that you wouldn't want to support, I think it's Steamforge Games, to back them on this one. But Resident Evil 3 apparently resolved a lot of those issues. Component quality was better. I read the reviews and it seemed good. I think there was a few gripes with some of the component quality, and then they came out with Resident Evil. Now, I was eyeing, before these two Kickstarters came out, I actually was eyeing Resident Evil 2 despite the poor component quality, because I didn't know another Resident Evil board game was going to come out. So I did actually think about it for a while, because I thought, I read the rulebook, I liked the idea. It did, to me, capture the essence of Resident Evil, because I played Resident Evil 2 on the original PS and PS2, I think. No, PS. And it was memorable. Once Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil came out on the Kickstarter, I didn't bite, only because I had a few dungeon crawlers already. By the time I already had Hellboy, I had, what's my other dungeon crawler? Wrath of Ashadalon, and now I have Doom. Those ones I felt were the kind of gameplays I enjoyed. Resident Evil had it feels a bit more complicated, a deep gameplay, and it wasn't, I think that'd be just too much for me. Again, it's not a knock against the game itself. I still think a lot of people would really enjoy it. And maybe if it was my very first dungeon crawler, I probably would easily pick that up first. I probably would have picked up Resident Evil before Hellboy as my first dungeon crawler. So after that, there was Marvel Zombies, which is based on Zombicide. Zombicide I actually was thinking about, especially the second edition when it came out, streamlined some of the rule sets. And when I saw Marvel Zombies on the Kickstarter, wow, that would scratch that Marvel itch that I have, considering I seem to be backing several other Marvel-themed games, tabletop games. But at the end of the day, I think the minis are cool. I do enjoy what Zombicide, or that whole series of Zombicide, offers, but still wasn't enough for me to say, yeah, I definitely really want it. The last one, which is very recent, is called Wreckland, and I've only been reading a bit about it, but actually it wasn't something I was looking for. I just thought I'd take a look and see what it's about. But it was from the same publishers or the same designer as the one who created Warp's Edge. And Warp's Edge had a theme, like it's space, sort of Space Invaders theme, that kind of intrigued me. I didn't really care for the Wreck and Run theme, so I started to look into Warp's Edge. So it's not a Kickstarter. Wreck and Run is the Kickstarter, but they include the option to buy the Warp's Edge Kickstarter, I guess, components from when it was a Kickstarter. So upgraded tokens and so forth. So and I think some additional promo material. So it's there as part of the Wreck and Run. You can buy it separately if you wanted to. But when I worked out the costs, I was like, I don't think I really need those Kickstarter exclusives to enjoy the game. I think if anything, it would really just be the tokens. From the sounds of it, it is a token shuffle, or they call it bag builder, which I have none of those. I don't have a game, anything like that. And right now I'm currently looking at Warp's Edge and trying to see if I can get myself a copy of it. Even the retail copy is enough with me, for me. So there you go. There's my list of Kickstarters that I've backed, and a few that I almost backed, but my wallet just wouldn't open up for them. So hopefully in the long run, and at least for this year, I will have those Kickstarters that I backed in my hands, ready to do a playthrough and post a video on those. So until next time, stay bored.